What I want to transition to now is, in the last, use 15 minutes to give everybody on this panel the opportunity to identify the one thing they would do in, I was going to say in the short term, but let's open it up to each of you. What is the number one priority for each of you if you were to advise a utility how they should be responding to this cash crunch as a result of COVID-19, whether it's short-term, medium, or long-term? What is the one thing that you would recommend a utility prioritize in response? I'm going to do this kind of in reverse order by who has spoken most recently. So I'm going to go to somebody that hasn't spoken recently. Looking at, I think, John, you've been quietest the longest. Based on your experience and the studies you've looked at in the U.S., what's the first thing our utilities, especially those here in Africa, should be thinking about?
I think one first step to think about is to do an initial assessment in terms of what does your current financial picture look like. So if you don't have a good handle on that, it makes it really hard to come up with some solutions. But that's, even in the U.S., we've done a fair amount of assessment of what impact does this crisis have on individual utilities, and getting a good handle on that, and assessing what the risks are going forward, what the potential near-term future looks like, and then how that impacts the finances of the utility is a good first step. It's not a solution, but it's a good first step to get a handle on what the picture looks like.
And presumably that would be like a sensitivity analysis, and it would look at, if this pandemic's with us for another 12, 18, 24 months, what does that kind of impact look like? Is that
exactly? Yes.
Great. Johan, what are you planning to do?
Thank you, Chris. I think, unfortunately, our first priority is to have to make sure that the residents all have water, because this is just going to go south. I mean, this is where we said, is it a social commodity or an economic commodity? And we have to be a little bit socialist on this one to say that we have to provide people with water. Now, what do we do to be able to make sure that the entity is able to pay its bills at the end of the month? And of course, what we have to do is we have to make sure that our non-revenue water losses are reducing. We have to not spend money that we don't have. So, unfortunately, my colleague there in the US said that we should not stop spending money because it has a huge impact on the economy. Unfortunately, from the utility side, if we don't have cash, we shouldn't spend it now. Which means that it may delay some of our capital projects, and we really have to look very carefully at our expenditure as well, that we only spend when it's absolutely necessary. And unfortunately, that's the only things we can do. Of course, we can go nag with Suzani and say, please give us some more money, but I don't think she's got money to dish out either, so it's not really going to help. Thanks.
Thanks, Johan. I also wanted to quickly address our participants as well, our audience. Please continue to use the Q&A function. Please submit your questions. We'll see if there's some time at the end to take a few last-minute questions, but we will also endeavor to respond after this presentation via email back to you. We do want to capture all of your questions and address them, and we'll call on our panelists to help provide their expertise in doing that. Peter Flower, what would if you unresigned and you were back in charge of Cape Town, what would be the first thing you would want to do, or what would be your priority for responding to this situation?
Okay, those are the ones that went before were certainly on my mind, but I think it's definitely cut down on any unnecessary expenditure. And that obviously looks to things like finding and reducing your non-revenue water as much as possible. And don't take your foot off that pedal through this period. And I think it's something that's important going forward to continue that momentum. And then if I can also expand it further, is find ways to assist your consumers to manage their use and to make payments and assist them in payment arrangement processes so that they don't build up this debt. Because as was mentioned earlier by one, yes, maybe we're giving you a holiday now, but at some point in time it's got to be paid. So some sort of payment arrangement. I mean, the city has worked with systems using water management devices to limit the indigents who have a certain free allocation and a cheaper allocation, limiting their consumption to stay within those ranges. It also assists in other things too. And then one other thing that can be useful in terms of recovering of debt, and possibly not to be used right now when everybody is stressed, is to, and the city has been doing this, is in terms of, because the water is not prepaid, but the electricity is. Most of Cape Townians are on prepaid electricity, or a lot of them anyway, is to take a portion when you're buying electricity and directing that towards offsetting outstanding debt. And depending on the profile of that consumer in terms of history of debt and a few other things, that ratio of how much gets taken off varies. So that is a useful mechanism to recover and help.
There you go. Thanks, Peter. That was great. Eva, hearing from you, what works best across Aqualia?
Yeah. Okay. From Aqualia points of view, I mean, I think we will continue doing what we have been doing, which is mainly involving all the stakeholders in the water business. That means we have been renegotiating contracts with the suppliers to try to change the payment terms, for instance, try to involve the government so they can either also delay some fees, because sometimes you have to pay fees for operating the systems or things like that, try to delay those payments, or try to get, in Colombia, there was a credit line from the government at zero interest to pay for those bills that you were not collecting. So you could delay those bills in, I think it was in 36 months, they could delay the payment from the 4 months that has been mainly this pandemic till now, in 36 months. So this kind of involvement of all the stakeholders, I think, is very important. And of course, at the end, to have your employees involved in being, on these awareness campaigns and being able to do the work in so many different ways that they are used to do it, because at the end, those are your assets, and that's your best face, because at the end, they are the ones that they are visiting the customers, they are on the streets, they are doing all the work. So if they are happy doing that, at the end, they will show that to the population, and people, they will be more aware that water is so important, and they will be able to, or at least they will try to pay for it and use the different media, the different ways to pay for the water, to not delay their bills and things like that. So I think involving all these stakeholders and renegotiating different agreements, I think that's a very important thing.
Thanks very much. Susanna, you're in an interesting position in that the impacts trickle up to you. If our water users, our water boards, and our municipalities aren't able to collect their revenue, they're going to have less money to pay for bulk water, and so your revenue impacts are second order. What are you thinking of over the coming months? How is the department going to ensure that they get paid for bulk water provision?
Ensuring how the department gets paid, I think that's a tough one. I'm not sure if there is anything that we can do there, but I think currently the currently running initiatives so far they I would say workable. But looking at the whole value chain and from the regulatory perspective, one of the things that my team and I have been seeing as a big divide is the relationship between the suppliers and the water users. There is really a great divide, and there is no understanding of each other, or there is users, when they lodge complaints, they would ask what exactly are they paying for, even though they know, but there seems to be a big divide there. So I would say, even though it may not be like immediately because the supply of water comes first, but the next best thing that needs to be done is to improve those relationships. Where consumer charters have to be in place, those have to be in place. Whether users knows about it, it's about the supplier making sure that the user knows about these things and using a consumer charter as a tool to get the responses from the users. The issues of leaks, Johan earlier spoke about the non-revenue water being high and having to reduce it. One of the key ways of reducing non-revenue water is actually reducing the lost water to leakages. I am not sure how we compare with the rest of the country, but I know that we have some of the highest percentages of water losses due to leaks. And we need to invest on that so that we can be able to manage the non-revenue water and therefore have some kind of cash that can flow through. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Stazani. Kelvin, what's your first priority when you sign off here? What are you trying to do to respond to these revenue crunches, or what would you advise?
Thank you. I think for me, stakeholder management becomes critical, and you need to isolate that guy that is paying you for the service and treat them well. Treat them well to an extent where even if you are in a ditch, they'll see you out of the ditch. But with hindsight as well, one of the issues that utility should begin to look at is a prepaid metering. It's controversial, I know, but and I know the technology for water is not yet refined. We need to refine that technology and go prepaid metering.
There we go, I'm off. William, to wrap us up here, what would you, as in your consulting role, what would you be advising your client utilities and others? How are they going to overcome this? William, I think you're muted. Let me unmute you. There you are.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So thanks so much for this discussion. There are three things that I would take home, and I think I would advise. The first one is, from the experience I've shared with you, states need to put in more money, more investment in their facilities. And where there is need, of course, the private sector should be encouraged. So the three Ps are very, very important. Number two, I agree with Kevin that now the utilities must start becoming customer-centric. They must know who their customers are. They must know who is very, very important in terms of service delivery, so that at least they perform their job as what the customer needs. Number three, and this is very, very important for me, I think learning from the experience of this COVID era, I think now utilities must start reforming themselves. As I've already said, we have a lot of dead wood in some of these utilities. And I can tell you that the day they said some of you can work home, you would see those who are anxiously wanting to go home and have a holiday. And you could see also those who are saying, no, we must work. So I think utilities is the time to look back and look at those who are actually efficient, those who want to work, those who are just deadwood, who should actually stay home and not even appear in the premises once everything is okay. So thank you so much.
Thank you. On behalf of Rock Blue, I would like to thank all of our panelists. Did I just get muted? No, it says I'm not. Can everybody hear me? There we
Yes.
go. Great. As I was saying, I thank all of our expert panelists. We really value the time you've committed today. I really appreciated the open and engaging exchange of ideas and debate on this. Thank you for all of our attendees. I'm proud to say this is our best attended lecture series today, and I think it speaks to the caliber of our panelists, as well as how topical the discussion was. For our attendees, I just want to reiterate that a copy of today's event was recorded, and a copy will be made available on the rockblue.org website. So that you can review it again, and please share it widely. And while you're there, you're welcome to check out our earlier lectures.